Get your ghetto ass out of first class before I have you arrested for theft. Flight attendant Jessica's voice cut through the cabin like a whip. She stood over Dr. Amara Johnson, hands on her hips, face twisted with disgust. Security officers flanked Amara's seat. Their hands moved toward her arms as she sat perfectly still in 2A. "Ma'am, we need you to come with us," Officer Williams said, gripping her elbow. Amara didn't resist as they yanked her upright. Her navy blazer wrinkled. Her briefcase crashed to the floor, contents spilling. "This is how people like you always act," Jessica sneered, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Stealing seats, playing victim." Passengers filmed with shaking phones. Children stared wide-eyed. Adults whispered in shock. What none of them knew was that this humiliated woman would destroy their airline in exactly 11 minutes. Have you ever been judged by your appearance before anyone bothered to learn your name? 20 minutes earlier, Dr. Amara Johnson had boarded Atlantic Airways Flight 447 like any other passenger. Her first-class ticket showed seat 2A. Her briefcase bore a subtle monogram, Johnson Capital. She'd settled into her seat, opened her laptop, and begun reviewing documents marked Confidential Merger Proposal. The header read, Atlantic Airways Strategic Investment, $1.2 billion. Her phone buzzed constantly, 47 missed calls from Atlantic Airways' CEO office. She declined each one, focusing on her work. That's when Jessica noticed her. "Excuse me." Jessica's voice carried that particular tone flight attendants use for problem passengers. "Can I see your boarding pass?" Amara looked up from her laptop. "Of course." She handed over the pass without hesitation. Jessica examined it like a detective studying evidence. She turned it over twice, held it up to the light, compared it to her passenger manifest. "There seems to be an issue," Jessica announced loudly. "Flight departure, 18 minutes. Other passengers began to pay attention. The businessman in 1C lowered his newspaper. The woman in 2B paused her phone conversation. "What kind of issue?" Amara asked calmly. "This ticket. It doesn't look right." Jessica's eyes narrowed. "How did you get this seat?" "I purchased it through your website 3 weeks ago." "That's impossible. First-class tickets cost $200. You probably got this through some discount site." Jessica's voice grew louder with each word. "Those sites sell fake tickets all the time." Amara's fingers tightened slightly on her pen. It was the only sign of tension she showed. The passenger in 2B had started filming discreetly with her phone. Her Instagram live stream showed 3 viewers initially. Within minutes, it climbed to 47. "Ma'am, I'm going to need to call my supervisor," Jessica said, pulling out her radio. "Monica to first class, please. We have a situation." Flight departure, 15 minutes. Monica arrived within 60 seconds. She was older than Jessica, with silver hair pulled back severely and reading glasses hanging from a chain. Her uniform was pressed to perfection, and she carried herself like someone who'd been handling situations for decades. "What's the problem?" Monica asked, looking directly at Jessica instead of Amara. "This passenger has a questionable ticket for first class," Jessica explained. "I think it might be fraudulent." Monica turned to examine Amara for the first time. Her eyes swept from Amara's natural hair to her leather pumps, lingering on details that had nothing to do with her ticket. "I see," Monica said slowly. "Ma'am, we're going to need to verify your identity and payment method." "I'd be happy to provide identification," Amara replied, reaching for her purse. The Instagram live viewer count had jumped to 340. Comments started flowing. "This is disgusting. Sue them! Record everything! What airline is this?" "Let me see your ID and credit card," Monica demanded, holding out her hand like she was confiscating contraband from a student. Amara provided both items. Monica studied them with exaggerated skepticism. "Dr. Amara Johnson," Monica read aloud, emphasizing the title with obvious disbelief. "And what kind of doctor are you?" "I have a PhD in economics from Harvard Business School." Jessica snorted. Right. And I'm the Queen of England. The passenger in 1C finally spoke up. Is there a problem here? Some of us have connecting flights. Monica turned to address him. Sir, we're just ensuring all passengers are properly ticketed. Some people try to sneak into first class and we have to protect our paying customers. Flight departure, 12 minutes. I am a paying customer, Amara said quietly, and I'd like to speak with your manager. I am the manager for situations like this, Monica replied sharply. And frankly, your attitude is concerning. Passengers who argue usually have something to hide. The Instagram live stream now had 890 viewers. Someone had shared it to Twitter with the hashtag flight discrimination. Local news accounts were beginning to take notice. Monica pulled out her radio again. Security to gate 23. We need assistance with an uncooperative passenger. Amara's phone buzzed again. Another call from Atlantic Airways' CEO office. She declined it and noticed a text message from her assistant. Board meeting moved to 2 p.m. Merger vote still scheduled for 3 p.m. They're waiting for your final decision. She glanced at her briefcase where the merger documents lay visible. The Atlantic Airways logo was clearly printed on the cover page, along with financial projections showing their quarterly revenue, $847 million. But Jessica and Monica were too focused on their assumptions to notice what was right in front of them. You know what I think? Jessica said, loud enough for surrounding passengers to hear. I think she works in the galley on another airline and somehow got hold of this ticket. That's why she won't look me in the eye. Amara did look her in the eye then. Her gaze was steady, calm, and completely unafraid. Flight departure, 10 minutes. 2 TSA officers appeared at the aircraft door. Officer Williams, a heavy-set man with tired eyes, and Officer Miller, younger and visibly uncomfortable with the situation unfolding before her. What seems to be the issue? Officer Williams asked. Jessica pointed at Amara. Suspicious passenger with a questionable ticket. She's been argumentative and refuses to cooperate. Officer Miller looked confused. Ma'am, do you have your boarding pass and ID? I've already provided both, Amara said calmly. Multiple times. She probably stole that ID too, Jessica muttered, just loud enough to be heard. The Instagram live viewer count hit 1,200. Comments were flooding in faster than anyone could read them. Someone had identified the airline and tagged their official social media accounts. Officer Williams sighed. Ma'am, I'm going to ask you to gather your belongings and come with us while we sort this out. Amara looked at her briefcase, then at her phone showing another declined call from the CEO's office. She had a choice to make. She could reveal who she was right now and end this humiliation instantly. Or she could let it play out and document exactly how Atlantic Airways treated passengers who looked like her. Flight departure, 8 minutes. Officer Williams, she said quietly, I want you to know that I'm not resisting, but I am documenting this interaction for legal purposes. She gathered her belongings slowly, deliberately. The merger documents slipped slightly from her briefcase, revealing the Johnson capital letterhead. But no one was paying attention to details anymore. They had already decided who she was. The aircraft aisle had become a theater. Passengers craned their necks from economy class, trying to catch glimpses of the unfolding drama. Children pressed against windows to see better. Adults whispered theories to each other. Officer Williams placed his hand gently on Amara's elbow. Ma'am, please come with us. She stood slowly, maintaining her composure. Her briefcase remained open on the seat, merger documents partially visible. The Atlantic Airways logo peeked out from beneath other papers, but everyone was too focused on her face to notice. This is unnecessary, she said quietly, her voice carrying despite its softness. That's what they all say, Jessica muttered from behind the officers. Flight departure, 6 minutes. As they moved toward the aircraft door, the passenger in 2B continued her Instagram live stream. The viewer count had exploded to 2,400. Comments scrolled by in a blur. This is 2025, not 1955. Get her lawyer on the phone. What's the airline stock symbol? Someone call the news. Captain Marcus Rivera appeared in the cockpit doorway. He was a tall man with graying temples and 23 years of flying experience. He'd seen passenger disputes before, but never one that had completely halted boarding. "What's the delay?" he called out. "We have a tight departure window." Monica hurried toward him. "Captain, we have a passenger situation. Someone with a questionable ticket trying to occupy first class." Rivera looked past Monica to see Amara walking calmly between two TSA officers, her head held high. Something about the scene bothered him, but he couldn't put his finger on what. "How long will this take?" he asked. "Air traffic control is already asking about our delay." "Just a few more minutes, Captain. We need to verify her story." The businessman in 1C stood up. "Excuse me, but I have a connecting flight in Atlanta. Can we resolve this quickly?" "Sir, please remain seated," Officer Miller said. "We're handling the situation." "Handling what situation?" The man's voice carried irritation. "I saw her boarding pass. It looked legitimate to me." Jessica whirled around. "Sir, you don't understand. People like this try to scam their way into first class all the time. They print fake tickets, steal credit cards, all sorts of schemes." "People like what?" The businessman's question hung in the air. Monica quickly intervened. "What my colleague means is that we've seen an increase in ticket fraud recently. We have to verify everything." Flight departure, 4 minutes. At the aircraft door, Officer Williams radioed for additional support. "We need a supervisor at Gate 23. Possible ticket fraud case." Amara's phone buzzed again. Another call from the Atlantic Airways CEO office. The caller ID showed Robert Miller, CEO direct line. She declined it and noticed her assistant had sent another text. "Sir, they're asking if you want to postpone the board meeting. The merger vote is critical today." She typed back quickly. "No postponement. This situation is educational." Ground Supervisor Carl Hendricks arrived at the aircraft door. He was a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses and the harried look of someone who'd been dealing with airport crises for 15 years. His radio crackled constantly with updates from other gates. "What do we have here?" Carl asked, slightly out of breath. Officer Williams explained the situation while Amara stood silently nearby. She noticed how each person who joined the discussion spoke about her as if she wasn't there. "Has anyone actually called to verify the ticket?" Carl asked. Monica looked annoyed. "We don't need to call. It's obviously fraudulent. Look at her." "Look at her what?" Carl asked carefully. The Instagram live viewer count hit 4,200. Someone had started a hashtag. Atlantic Airways discrimination. The airline's official Twitter account was being flooded with mentions and demands for response. Local news stations in New York and Atlanta began picking up the story. A reporter from Channel 7 News was already heading to LaGuardia Airport. Flight departure, 2 minutes. Captain Rivera's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing a brief delay due to a passenger boarding issue. We'll be underway shortly." Passengers groaned. Some checked their watches. Others pulled out phones to text about missed connections. In the first-class cabin, the woman who'd been live streaming spoke up. "You know, I've been watching this whole thing, and that lady never raised her voice or acted suspicious. She just sat there reading her papers." "Ma'am, please don't interfere," Monica snapped. "You don't have all the facts." "What facts? That she's black and in first class? Because that seems to be the only suspicious thing here." The cabin fell silent. Someone had said what everyone was thinking. Jessica's face flushed red. "That's not... We don't... This has nothing to do with race. This is about ticket fraud." "Then why haven't you checked anyone else's ticket?" the woman pressed. "I'm in first class too. Want to see my boarding pass?" Flight departure. Now. But the plane remained at the gate. Carl pulled out his radio. "Operations, we're going to need a few more minutes at Gate 23. Passenger verification in progress." The response crackled back. "Gate 23, you're showing red on the board. We need this bird in the air." Copy that. Working on it. Amara watched the entire exchange with growing fascination. In her 15 years of running Johnson Capital, she'd seen organizational dysfunction before, but rarely this spectacular. Her phone rang again. This time it wasn't the CEO's office. It was her attorney. Dr. Johnson, I've been watching the live stream. Are you being detained without cause? She spoke quietly into the phone. No detention yet. Just verification. I'm documenting everything from here. This could constitute a civil rights violation under Section 1981. I'm aware, she said softly. Let it play out. Officer Miller had been growing increasingly uncomfortable with the situation. She approached Carl. Sir, maybe we should just verify the ticket through the airline system. It takes 30 seconds. Carl nodded. Good idea. Monica, can you pull up her reservation? Monica hesitated. The system it's running slow today. Try it anyway. The Instagram live stream had reached 6,800 viewers. News outlets were starting to embed the stream in their online articles. Atlantic Airways. Discrimination was trending in New York, Atlanta, and Chicago. Inside the terminal, passengers at other gates had heard about the incident and were pulling up the live stream on their phones. Airport workers paused their duties to watch. The story was spreading faster than anyone could contain it. Flight now 15 minutes delayed. Monica reluctantly pulled out her tablet and accessed the airline's reservation system. Her fingers moved slowly across the screen, as if she was hoping the system really would be slow. Well, Carl asked. Monica stared at the screen. Her face went pale. What does it say? Officer Williams asked. Monica's voice came out as barely a whisper. The ticket it's legitimate. What was that? Carl leaned closer. The ticket is valid, Monica said louder. First class, seat 2A, paid in full 3 weeks ago. The live stream comments exploded. Told you so! Sue them all! This is disgusting. Atlantic Airways stock is about to tank. But Carl noticed something else on Monica's screen that made his stomach drop. The payment method showed a corporate account. Johnson Capital Partners. Executive Travel. He'd heard that name before. Recently. In airport management meetings about major corporate clients. Monica, he said carefully. What's the passenger's full name in the system? Monica's hands were shaking now. Dr. Amara Johnson. Johnson Capital Partners. Carl's face went white. Johnson Capital was one of their largest corporate clients. They booked hundreds of thousands of dollars in business travel annually. But there was something else. Something he was trying to remember from the morning briefing about VIP passengers and special handling protocols. Oh no, he whispered. What? Officer Williams asked. Carl was frantically scrolling through his phone, looking for the morning's VIP passenger list. When he found it, his worst fears were confirmed. Dr. Amara Johnson. Johnson. Capital CEO. VIP protocol. Board meeting today. Merger discussion. Handle with extreme care. The merger discussion. The $1.2 billion deal he'd heard rumors about. Carl looked at Amara, who was standing calmly nearby, watching their faces as realization dawned. She smiled slightly. It wasn't a cruel smile. It was the smile of someone who had just learned everything she needed to know. Carl's hands trembled as he stared at his phone screen. The VIP passenger alert was clear. Dr. Amara Johnson. Johnson, Capital CEO, merger discussion. Today, $1.2 billion deal. Handle with extreme care. He looked up at Amara, who stood calmly between the TSA officers, her expression unreadable. The woman they had just dragged off the plane wasn't just any passenger. She was the passenger, the one who could make or break Atlantic Airways' future. Officer Williams, Carl said quietly, I need to speak with you privately. They stepped aside, but Amara could see Carl showing Williams his phone. Williams' face went from confusion to alarm to what looked like panic. The Instagram live stream had reached 8,900 viewers. Comments flooded in. What are they whispering about? Look at their faces. Something big is happening. The supervisor looks like he's about to throw up. Captain Rivera approached the group, his patience clearly exhausted. What's the status? I have 147 passengers asking about their connections. Carl couldn't meet his eyes. Captain, we may have made an error. What kind of error? Before Carl could answer, Amara spoke for the first time in several minutes. Her voice was calm, professional, and carried the authority of someone accustomed to boardrooms. Captain Rivera, I believe there's been a misunderstanding. May I have a moment of your time? She reached into her briefcase, the same briefcase that had been ignored throughout this entire ordeal. From it, she withdrew a single business card and handed it to the captain. Rivera read it aloud. Dr. Amara Johnson, Chief Executive Officer, Johnson Capital Partners. The business card was elegant, understated. Heavy stock paper, embossed lettering, a company logo that spoke of serious money and serious business. I don't understand, Rivera said, looking from the card to Amara to his crew. Amara reached back into her briefcase and produced a second document. This one made Rivera's face drain of all color. Atlantic Airways Strategic Investment Proposal, he read from the header. Johnson Capital Partners. Investment amount, $1.2 billion. The aircraft fell silent. Even the background hum of the ventilation system seemed to pause. Monica, who had been standing frozen since discovering the valid ticket, found her voice. That's not possible. Amara looked at her directly. I assure you it's quite real. Your CEO, Robert Miller, has been trying to reach me all morning. We have a board meeting scheduled for 2 p.m. today, followed by the merger vote at 3 p.m. She showed them her phone, scrolling through the 52 missed calls from Atlantic Airways, CEO direct line, and the increasingly urgent text messages from her assistant. Carl felt like the ground was shifting beneath his feet. Dr. Johnson, we didn't know. Of course you didn't, Amara said quietly. You were too busy making assumptions to look at any actual evidence. The live stream viewer count hit 12,000. Someone had shared it to TikTok, Twitter, and LinkedIn simultaneously. Atlantic Airways discrimination was now trending nationally, but the real bombshell was yet to come. Amara pulled out her phone and made a call. Everyone watched as she spoke calmly into the device. Robert? Yes, it's Amara. I'm currently at LaGuardia, on your aircraft, having what I can only describe as an enlightening experience with your staff. Even from several feet away, they could hear CEO Robert Miller's panicked voice coming through the phone. Dr. Johnson, thank God, we've been trying to reach you all morning. The board is assembled, waiting for your presentation. Is everything all right? That depends on your definition of all right, Robert. I've just spent the last 20 minutes being accused of ticket fraud, theft, and generally being treated like a criminal by your employees, all while carrying our merger proposal. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Amara continued, her voice never rising above conversational level. Your flight attendant called me ghetto, Robert. Your ground supervisor suggested I was running some sort of scam. Your security team dragged me off the aircraft based on nothing more than their assumptions about what someone like me could afford. Captain Rivera looked like he might faint. Monica had started backing away slowly, as if she could somehow escape the situation. Jessica had gone completely white and was gripping the back of a seat for support. Robert, are you there? Amara asked. Dr. Johnson, please tell me this is some kind of misunderstanding. Oh, it's a misunderstanding, all right. The question is whether it's the kind of misunderstanding that a $1.2 billion investment can overlook. The live stream exploded with comments. She's the CEO? $1.2 billion? Atlantic Airways just made the biggest mistake in corporate history. This is better than any movie. But Amara wasn't finished. She reached into her briefcase one more time and pulled out a thick folder labeled Due Diligence Report, Atlantic Airways Corporate Culture Assessment. Robert, I want you to know that this incident is being live-streamed to over 12,000 viewers right now. It's trending on social media. Your stock price has already begun to fluctuate. But more importantly, it's given me invaluable insight into Atlantic Airways' operational culture. She opened the folder, revealing pages of data, charts, and analysis. You see, Robert, when Johnson Capital considers a major investment, we don't just look at financial statements. We examine corporate culture, employee training protocols, and operational decision-making processes. We want to ensure our investments align with companies that share our values. Carl finally found his voice. Dr. Johnson, please, this was just a terrible mistake. Amara turned to him with the kind of look that had made her one of the most feared negotiators in corporate America. Mr. Hendricks, this wasn't a mistake. A mistake is adding numbers wrong or missing a flight connection. This was a systematic failure of judgment, training, and basic human decency. She addressed the group that had gathered around her, the flight crew, ground staff, and security officers who had spent the last 30 minutes treating her like a criminal. I want everyone here to understand something. I didn't reveal who I was immediately because I wanted to see how your airline treats passengers who don't have corporate influence or media attention. I wanted to understand what happens to regular people who face this kind of treatment but don't have the power to fight back. The Instagram Live viewer count had reached 18,000. News vans were pulling up to LaGuardia Airport. Atlantic Airways' stock price was dropping in real time as word spread through financial networks. Officer Williams, who had been silent throughout the revelation, finally spoke up. Dr. Johnson, I need to apologize. This shouldn't have happened to anyone, regardless of who they are. You're right, Officer Williams, it shouldn't happen to anyone. But it does happen. Every day. To people who look like me. To people who can't afford first-class tickets. To people who don't have the luxury of a corporate legal team. She looked directly into the camera that was still live streaming to thousands of viewers. This isn't really about me. This is about systemic bias, unconscious prejudice, and the assumptions we make about people based on their appearance. Today I had the power to expose it. Most people don't. Her phone buzzed with another call from Robert Miller. She answered it on speakerphone this time. Dr. Johnson, I'm in my car heading to the airport right now. Please, we need to discuss this situation immediately. Robert, the situation is quite clear. The question is, what Atlantic Airways intends to do about it. Anything you want. Full investigation, policy changes, staff retraining, whatever it takes. Amara looked around at the faces surrounding her, some ashamed, some defiant, all uncertain about what would happen next. Robert, I'm going to board this aircraft now and take my properly assigned seat in first class. I'll be reviewing our merger proposal during the flight. We'll discuss the terms when I arrive in Atlanta. Of course, Dr. Johnson, whatever you need. She hung up the phone and looked at Captain Rivera. Captain, I believe we have a flight to catch. Rivera nodded quickly. Absolutely, Dr. Johnson. Please let me personally escort you to your seat. As they walked back toward the aircraft, Amara paused and addressed Officer Williams one more time. Officer Williams, I want you to know that your apology meant something. Real change starts with individuals who are willing to acknowledge when something is wrong. The live stream viewer count had reached 23,000. The story was now being covered by major news outlets. Atlantic Airways' customer service phone lines were jammed with calls. Their social media accounts were flooded with demands for accountability. But the most powerful moment came as Amara settled back into seat 2A. She opened her laptop, pulled up the merger proposal, and began typing notes in the margins. Jessica, who had been standing in the galley throughout the revelation, approached hesitantly. Dr. Johnson, I don't know what to say. Amara looked up from her laptop. Jessica, I'm going to give you some advice. The next time you see someone who doesn't look like what you expect, remember this moment. Remember that you never know who you're really talking to. The aircraft door finally closed. Captain Rivera's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the delay. We're cleared for takeoff." As the plane taxied toward the runway, Amara continued working on her laptop. The merger proposal was still open, but now it included a new section: Corporate Culture Remediation Requirements. The Instagram live stream finally ended as the aircraft took off, but not before reaching 31,000 viewers and generating hundreds of thousands of social media interactions. In the span of 43 minutes, Dr. Amara Johnson had been accused of theft, dragged off an aircraft, vindicated, revealed as a CEO, and transformed a routine business flight into a viral moment that would reshape Atlantic Airways forever. But the real power play was just beginning. The flight to Atlanta took 2 hours and 17 minutes. Amara spent every minute of it rewriting the merger proposal. What had started as a straightforward acquisition deal was now something entirely different. She opened a new document on her laptop. Atlantic Airways Cultural Integration Requirements, Addendum to Investment Agreement. Her fingers moved across the keyboard with surgical precision. Section 1. Immediate Corrective Actions. Mandatory bias training for all customer-facing employees within 30 days. Implementation of incident reporting system with external oversight. Establishment of passenger advocacy program with 2 LMR's annual budget. Third-party audit of all passenger complaint procedures. She pulled up Atlantic Airways' latest financial statements on her second screen. The numbers told a story of a company desperately needing her investment. Q4. Revenue, $847 million. Annual debt service, $340 million. Cash on hand, $67 million. Debt-to-equity ratio, 3.21. Without Johnson Capital's investment, Atlantic Airways would struggle to meet their debt obligations within 18 months. They needed her more than she needed them. Her phone buzzed with a text from her CFO. Stock down 8% in after-hours trading. Social media mentions up 2,400%. Legal wants to know if we're proceeding with the deal. She typed back, "Proceeding, with modifications." 20 minutes before landing, her assistant forwarded a link to the trending story. CNN had picked it up. So had Fox Business, Bloomberg, and the Wall Street Journal. The headlines were brutal. CEO dragged off plane hours before 1.2B deal. Atlantic Airways stock plunges after discrimination incident. When corporate bias costs $1.2 billion, the original Instagram live video had been viewed 340,000 times and shared across every social platform. Hashtag Atlantic Airways discrimination was trending in 12 countries. As the plane descended into Atlanta, Amara's phone rang. Robert Miller again. "Dr. Johnson, I'm at the airport waiting for you. The entire board is assembled. We're prepared to address this situation immediately." "Good," she said simply. "We have a lot to discuss." Hartsfield-Jackson, Atlanta International Airport, 1:47 p.m. The moment Amara stepped off the jetway, she was met by a delegation that looked like a corporate crisis response team. Robert Miller led the group, a man in his 50s with silver hair and the worried expression of someone watching his company's reputation crumble in real time. Behind him stood 5 other executives, all looking like they'd rather be anywhere else in the world. "Dr. Johnson," Miller began, extending his hand, "I cannot express how deeply sorry we are about what happened. This is not representative of Atlantic Airways' values." Amara shook his hand briefly. "Mr. Miller, your apology is noted, but I'm more interested in your company's actions moving forward." She looked at the assembled executives. "I assume you've all seen the video?" Nervous nods all around. "Then you understand that this isn't just a public relations problem. This is a fundamental operational failure that raises serious questions about Atlantic Airways' corporate culture and training protocols." Chen gestured toward a conference room. "Please, let's discuss this privately." "Actually," Amara said, pulling out her phone, "I think transparency is important here." She opened her phone's recording app and placed it on the conference table. I want our entire conversation documented. Given this morning's events, I'm sure you understand my desire for accurate record-keeping." The executives exchanged glances but didn't object. Amara opened her briefcase and spread out several documents. The merger proposal was there, but so were printouts of Atlantic Airways financial statements, employee training manuals, and a thick folder of similar discrimination incidents she'd had her team research during the flight. "Let's start with some facts," she said. "Atlantic Airways reported $847 million in revenue last quarter, but your debt service is $340 million annually. Your cash reserves are at $67 million, which gives you approximately 18 months of operational runway without additional investment." She looked around the table. "You need this deal more than I do." Chen nodded reluctantly. "We're committed to making this partnership work, Dr. Johnson." "Partnership?" Amara raised an eyebrow. "Mr. Miller, what happened this morning wasn't a partnership problem. It was a systemic failure that exposed deep-rooted bias in your organization." She opened her laptop and turned the screen toward the group. "I've spent the flight researching similar incidents involving your airline. In the past 18 months, Atlantic Airways has faced 12 discrimination complaints filed with the Department of Transportation. 7 involved African American passengers. 4 resulted in settlements totaling $2.3 million. The room fell silent. "Your current litigation exposure averages $192,000 per incident. But this morning's incident was live-streamed to over 300,000 viewers and covered by major news outlets. The potential liability is significantly higher." She clicked to the next slide. "Based on similar cases, reputational damage typically results in a 12 to 15% stock value decline over 6 months. Your market cap of $2.8 billion means potential losses of $336 to $420 million. CFO Margaret Torres, a woman in her 40s who had been silent until now, finally spoke. "Dr. Johnson, what would it take to move forward with the original investment terms?" Amara smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. "Ms. Torres, the original terms are no longer on the table. This morning's incident has fundamentally changed the risk profile of this investment." She pulled out a new document. "These are my revised terms. Johnson Capital Investment Proposal. Revised terms. Investment amount, $1.2 billion, unchanged. Equity stake, 35%, increased from 25%. Board representation, 4 seats, increased from 2. Mandatory Cultural Integration Fund, $50 million over 3 years. External bias. Audit, annual, with public reporting. Customer Advocacy Program, $2 million annual budget. Employee Training Overhaul, complete redesign within 90 days. These terms reflect the additional oversight and remediation costs necessary to address the cultural issues your organization clearly faces." Robert Miller's face had gone pale. "Dr. Johnson, these terms are significantly more demanding than our original agreement. Mr. Miller, this morning your employees accused me of theft, suggested I was running a scam, and physically removed me from an aircraft based solely on their prejudices. These terms reflect the risk I'm taking by associating Johnson Capital with Atlantic Airways." She leaned forward. "But let me be clear about something. This isn't just about money or control. This is about ensuring that what happened to me this morning never happens to another passenger." She opened another folder. "I've drafted a comprehensive bias prevention program. It includes mandatory unconscious bias training for all employees, customer incident response protocols, and a passenger advocacy program with real authority to investigate complaints." "The cost?" Miller asked weakly. "The Cultural Integration Fund covers most expenses. But more importantly, it's an investment in your company's future. Airlines with strong diversity and inclusion programs have 23% higher customer satisfaction scores and 18% lower employee turnover." She stood up and walked to the window overlooking the airport. "Mr. Miller, you can continue operating the way you have been, facing lawsuits and bad publicity every few months, Or you can use this moment to transform Atlantic Airways into an industry leader in customer service and cultural competency. The executives huddled together, whispering urgently. Amara could hear fragments. Stock price. Debt obligations. No other options. After 5 minutes, Miller looked up. Dr. Johnson, if we agree to these terms, what guarantee do we have that you won't publicize this morning's incident further? Amara turned back to face the group. Mr. Miller, I'm not interested in destroying Atlantic Airways. I'm interested in improving it. The story is already public. I can't control that. But I can control whether Johnson Capital becomes a partner in Atlantic Airways' transformation or simply another investor who walked away from a problematic company. She returned to her seat. The choice is yours, but I need a decision in the next 10 minutes. I have other investment opportunities that don't come with this level of reputational risk. The room fell silent except for the hum of air conditioning and the distant sound of aircraft engines. Margaret Torres was the first to speak. The terms are acceptable. One by one, the other executives nodded their agreement. Robert Miller looked like a man who had just avoided a corporate death sentence. Dr. Johnson, we accept your revised terms. When can we begin implementing the changes? Amara closed her laptop and began packing her briefcase. Implementation begins tomorrow. I'll have my team on site Monday morning to begin the cultural assessment and training program development. She paused at the door. Oh, and Mr. Miller? I want Jessica, Monica, and Carl enrolled in the first bias training session. This morning was a learning experience for all of us. As she walked out of the conference room, Amara's phone buzzed with a text from her assistant. Atlantic Airways stock up 12% on news of confirmed merger. Media calling it the most expensive discrimination incident in corporate history. She smiled and typed back, not expensive, transformative. The real work was just beginning. 6 months later, the transformation of Atlantic Airways began with 3 terminations announced the day after Amara's meeting with the board. Jessica Martinez, the flight attendant who had called Amara ghetto, was dismissed for violating the company's dignity and respect policy. Monica Stevens, the ground supervisor who had questioned Amara's credentials, was demoted to baggage claim operations. Carl Hendricks kept his job but was reassigned to cargo logistics after completing 40 hours of bias training. The changes didn't stop there. Dr. Angela Washington, a former Harvard Business School professor specializing in organizational psychology, was hired as Atlantic Airways' first chief diversity officer. Her budget, $12 million annually, more than most airlines spent on their entire customer service departments. We're not just training people to avoid discrimination, Dr. Washington explained to the company's 47,000 employees during mandatory training sessions. We're creating a culture where every passenger feels valued and respected, regardless of their background. The training program Amara had demanded became a model for the entire airline industry. It included unconscious bias education, cultural competency modules, and real-world scenario practice. Every employee, from baggage handlers to executives, completed the 16-hour program. But the most visible change was the passenger advocacy program. Located in every major airport hub, the program provided immediate assistance to travelers facing discrimination or unfair treatment. The advocates had real authority. They could authorize vouchers, arrange alternative flights, and even override employee decisions in cases of bias. In its first 6 months, the program handled 847 cases. 73 involved potential discrimination. All were resolved within 24 hours, with an average customer satisfaction rating of 4.8 out of 5. The financial impact exceeded everyone's expectations. Atlantic Airways' customer satisfaction scores jumped from 2.1 to 4.2 stars on major travel websites. Employee turnover dropped by 34%. Most importantly, discrimination complaints fell to 0. The stock price told the real story. From its low point the day of Amara's incident, Atlantic Airways stock had risen 67%. The company's market cap increased by $1.8 billion, making it one of the best-performing airline stocks of the year. The monitoring innovation. The crown jewel of the reform program was the Dignity First mobile app, developed in partnership with a team of software engineers and civil rights attorneys. Passengers could report incidents in real time, complete with photo and video evidence. The reports went directly to the passenger advocacy team, bypassing traditional customer service channels that might minimize or ignore complaints. But the app's most innovative feature was its predictive analytics system. By analyzing patterns in passenger complaints, employee behavior, and operational data, it could identify potential bias incidents before they escalated. Airport managers received daily reports highlighting employees who might benefit from additional training or passengers who had experienced multiple negative interactions. The system caught problems that human oversight might miss. Within 3 months, similar apps were being tested by United, Delta, and American Airlines. Personal transformations. Officer Williams, the TSA agent who had apologized to Amara during the incident, became an unexpected advocate for change. He volunteered to help develop the bias training curriculum and spoke at industry conferences about recognizing discrimination in airport settings. "That day changed how I see my job," he told a gathering of aviation security professionals. "I realized that protecting passengers means protecting them from unfair treatment, not just physical threats." Even Jessica found redemption. After losing her job at Atlantic Airways, she enrolled in a diversity and inclusion certificate program at Georgia State University. She now works for a nonprofit organization that provides bias training to hospitality workers. "I had to face the truth about my own prejudices," she said in an interview with CNN 6 months later. "What happened that day was wrong, and I'm spending the rest of my career making sure it doesn't happen to anyone else." Industry impact. The Atlantic Airways model became a case study taught in business schools and cited in congressional hearings on transportation equity. 3 other major airlines implemented similar programs within 8 months. The Department of Transportation developed new guidelines for handling discrimination complaints, largely based on Atlantic Airways protocols. Amara's story became part of required reading in corporate leadership courses. Harvard Business School invited her to give a guest lecture titled, "When Crisis Becomes Catalyst: Transforming Corporate Culture Through Strategic Response." The bigger victory. But perhaps the most meaningful change came in the daily experiences of ordinary passengers. Keisha Roberts, a teacher from Detroit, wrote to Amara after a flight to visit her elderly mother. "I was nervous about flying first class because of stories I'd heard, but the flight attendant was so welcoming, and when I mentioned it was my first time in first class, she made sure I felt comfortable the entire flight. I know things are changing because of what you did." Stories like Keisha's arrived in Amara's inbox weekly. Parents traveling with children, elderly passengers needing assistance, business travelers who looked different from what some people expected. The systemic change Amara had demanded was working, one flight at a time. The numbers don't lie. By the end of the year, the results were undeniable. Discrimination complaints, down 94% across all major airlines. Customer satisfaction, up 23% industry-wide employee bias training, implemented by 73% of U.S. airlines. Passenger advocacy programs, launched by 8 major carriers. Atlantic Airways had transformed from a discrimination liability into an industry leader. The company that had once dragged Amara off a plane for being black was now winning awards for diversity and inclusion. The merger between Johnson Capital and Atlantic Airways was finalized in December, with Amara taking her seat on the board of directors. Her first motion as a board member was to establish an annual scholarship fund for students studying transportation equity and civil rights. The fund was named the Dignity in Flight Scholarship Program. It seemed fitting. 2 years later, the legacy doctor. Amara Johnson stood in the boardroom of Johnson Capital, looking out at the Atlanta skyline. On her desk lay a magazine cover from Forbes. The $1.2 billion lesson, how one woman's humiliation transformed an industry. The article detailed how her experience had sparked what business journals now called the Great Aviation Awakening, a fundamental shift in how airlines approach diversity, inclusion, and passenger rights. But the real impact couldn't be measured in stock prices or corporate policies. It lived in the real-life stories of passengers who now traveled without fear, in the touching stories of employees who learned to see beyond their assumptions, in the black stories that were finally being heard and believed. Maria Gonzalez, a Latina entrepreneur from Phoenix, had written just last week, "I flew first class for the first time since starting my company. 20 years ago, I would have been terrified. Today, I was treated like the CEO I am. Thank you for making that possible." These life stories poured in daily, each one a testament to how quiet dignity and strategic thinking could create waves of change far beyond any single incident. The ripple effect. The transformation extended beyond aviation. Hotels, restaurants, and retail companies began adopting the Atlantic Airways model. Business schools made diversity and inclusion mandatory coursework. Congress passed the Transportation Equity Act, mandating bias training for all federally regulated transportation employees. Amara's approach had proven something powerful. Real change happens not through anger or confrontation, but through strategic leverage combined with unwavering principle. She had transformed her moment of humiliation into a blueprint for systemic reform. Personal reflection. People ask me if I'm angry about what happened that day, Amara said during a recent interview. But anger wasn't what changed Atlantic Airways. Preparation was. Knowledge was. The quiet power of understanding exactly who you are and what you're worth. She had shown that sometimes the most powerful response to being underestimated is simply revealing who you've always been. The Johnson Capital Atlantic Airways partnership had become one of the most successful airline investments in recent history. More importantly, it had become proof that businesses could profit while promoting justice. The continuing mission. Today, Amara serves on the boards of 5 major corporations, each chosen for their commitment to meaningful diversity initiatives. The Travel Equity Initiative she founded has trained over 100,000 transportation workers across 23 countries. Her annual Dignity in Business conference draws executives from Fortune 500 companies worldwide, all seeking to learn how authentic inclusion can drive both profit and progress. But perhaps most significantly, she has never forgotten the lesson from Seat 2A. Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity, regardless of whether they have the power to demand it. Your voice matters. The story you just heard represents thousands of untold experiences. Every day, people face discrimination in airports, restaurants, hotels, and workplaces. Most don't have corporate leverage or media attention to fight back. That's where you come in. Share your own experiences with discrimination or bias in the comments below. Your story could be the catalyst for the next company to examine its practices. Your voice could prevent someone else from facing what Amara experienced that day. Have you witnessed unfair treatment during travel? Have you faced assumptions based on your appearance? Have you seen positive changes in how companies treat diverse customers? Tell us. The comment section is your platform. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that their dignity matters. Subscribe to Black Voices Uncut for more stories of quiet power overcoming loud prejudice. Ring that notification bell because change happens when witnesses become advocates. Remember, you never know who you're really talking to. Treat everyone like they matter, because they do. The most powerful revolutions begin with a single person refusing to accept what's unacceptable. What's your story?